So as a director or a storyteller, how should we use and think of gear when we are making our big narrative projects? Although gear doesn't matter when it comes to claiming yourself as a filmmaker and just getting it done, it does matter what tools you bring on the set, especially when you approach gear as tools that are going to help you make your film. So in this video, we're going to talk about how the gear of Trial 54 helped us to achieve our biggest project to date. So let's get after it. Everything here is all based on our short film that's coming out this summer called Trial 54, a sci-fi proof of concept for a feature that we made for $5,000. And with the gear we're talking about in this video, they're going to fall under one of three categories. One is shot capabilities. Did this piece of gear give us the actual literal ability to do a certain shot that we needed or wanted to do? Second category, subtle enhancements. Although not needed to necessarily get the shots and make the day, did this piece of equipment help us to get to that next plateau of visual storytelling? And three, my personal favorite category, which is saving our butts. Because sometimes that is exactly what tools are meant to do. Get you out of a bad situation and leverage your capabilities as a filmmaker. And as much as I don't believe that these first two pieces of equipment are that high on the list of importance, I know it's what a lot of people like to talk about first, so let's go ahead and talk about the camera, which is the ARRI Alexa Mini. Now for shot capabilities, it's not that high on the list until you start to realize the advantage of using a cinema camera of that scale over, say, a smaller system. Shooting a film like this, we had a sound operator with time code, we had an AC who needed to put on motors and wireless transceiver units, and we also needed to send out a signal to a video village. Not to mention the equipment that our director of photography, Micah D'Amico, wanted to use on that rig. Now, in theory, yes, you can do this stuff on smaller cameras like the Red Komodo or a Blackmagic Pocket camera or an FX3. The problem is when you go with these smaller camera units, you have to get a little more DIY with how you can rig up some of these components. Cameras like the Alexa Mini, the Venice, higher end Reds, or these big cameras you see with a million different things attached to them are designed to work more seamlessly with other crew members, so that the functionality of your AC, your time code, your director's monitoring, and all these other things that get attached to the camera can be built out in a way that's a little more seamless, a little more confident and compact in its rigging. It also makes for easier troubleshooting as well, because that's just simply what these cameras are designed to do as far as their I/O is concerned. Now, is there an undeniable magic of shooting on the OLED 3 sensors and quite frankly any camera at this caliber? Absolutely. But I'm not going to let any of that fall under capabilities. That all falls under subtle enhancements. Because at the end of the day, we could have shot this movie on an Ursa. We could have shot this on a cheaper camera and probably have gotten extremely similar results. But shooting on a camera like this, I'm not going to sit here and deny the magic of shooting on an ARRI camera sometimes, especially when it comes to highlight retention and the colors. But like I said, whether or not we shot this on the Alexa or some other camera, that's not necessarily going to make or break it. It just had to be a camera that could accommodate the other departments, as well as give us a confident and flexible image. The rest is just personal taste and availability. Next is the lenses. Now, I would never put a piece of glass under shot capabilities unless we're being coy here and being like, you have to have lenses to shoot a film. Yeah, no, but the only thing that I personally put as a functionality thing per se with a prime cinema lens is how fast it is. Because obviously if I have a lens that can open up to a 1.5 or a T, some extremely low aperture number, then that gives me more exposure options. But really what lenses are, in my opinion, are the top ranking item in the subtle enhancement category. More than your camera, the lenses are going to be the thing that supplies the constant character and tonality of your film. Because whether or not we shot this on the Alexa or a Venice or a Red, I think you would only be able to tell some differences, maybe, especially if you're a big camera nerd, maybe. What you'll definitely tell is what lens it was shot on. That's going to impact the image no matter what camera you shoot on. And if you want to be a deliberate and intentional filmmaker, you really, really got to consider the glass that you're putting in front of your camera. And I was very huge on making sure that we had the Cook Speed Pancros for this because they supplied exactly the sharpness, the richness, and a little bit of that vintage characteristic that I wanted in this entire film. Nothing here saved our butts, and nothing here was going to dictate whether or not we could make the film, because we could have slapped some Soviet lenses on the Alexa, or we could have used some other glass and the movie would have been made. There just would have been a difference in character, and as the director or as a DP, the gear you decide should fall under the intentions of your tonality. And that's exactly what the Cook Speed Pancros were for. Now, if you wanted me to talk more about the camera and the cinematography and the lenses, I do have another video about Trial 54. You can check it out here, or is it here? I can't remember. It's also in the description. Moving on. Now, this next piece of equipment, I really want to talk about because it is something I didn't think I was going to love so much, but it hits every category in this video, and that is a Steadicam. In shot capabilities, we always knew that this movie was going to start with a long push in on our talent in this wide area, and we knew we were not going to be able to lay down a ton of track. We knew we weren't going to have something like a proper dolly, like a dolly cart, Fisher, Chapman, Panther, whatever. We were pretty much only going to have a Dana dolly. And I hate Ronins, I hate movies. That's just who I am. I don't like the way they stabilize cameras, and I think they are very finicky to work with. So the answer to that question was the Steadicam, because we also needed to support the weight of the Alexa with all that crap on it. Which I know there are some non-Steadicam style rigs that can do that, but again, it's just who I am. But having that Steadicam gave us the ability to get this shot. And that's what I constantly have to think of as a director. What gear do I need to make sure is on set, and what operators do I need on set for that gear to accomplish the shots that I need to make the movie? We needed a Steadicam and a good Steadicam Op, which in this case was Davey, in order to get what is one of the more striking and visually important shots in the film. Now, visual subtlety. This one falls a little lower here because Steadicams ultimately, in my opinion, fall in this realm of Hollywood movement. They're very noticeable. They're very big. It's very extravagant sometimes, but with good operation and good intention, they can be used more subtly as the enhancement thing that we're talking about here. A good example are the moments that we just didn't have the time to set up a dolly slider, or times where we had to move up and down with a moving character where we didn't just want to simply pan up with the camera or tilt up with the camera, and we wanted to stay at their eye level. So you can see in shots like here in the kitchen, or this shot of Molly walking, we're still getting the smoothness and the slow, intentional approach that you can get from something like a dolly slider or a very slow shot on rails, but all through the convenience and operation of a Steadicam that we can quickly whip around to the other side and get a reverse angle. Which leads me to the butt saving. Holy crap, did this piece of gear absolutely save our asses on a few shots. The biggest example has to be this dancing sequence here. Originally, this sequence was going to be a series of handheld shots that moved around the character, had some quick cuts, and we were going to get like 4 to 5 takes of coverage for it. But we were dangerously running out of time. So talking with the AD and the DP and the rest of the crew, we came to the decision that, well, we've been kind of having some fun with the Steadicam here. Is there a world where we can capture just 1 or 2 shots of this coverage to both A, save on time, and also still hold on to the visual language of the film? Using the Steadicam instead of taking the time to get all this handheld coverage did, one, it saved us like 45 minutes to an hour of time, which can be huge. But it also gave us a shot that really lived on its own. There was a real beauty to the very slow movement of the Steadicam with how Molly was dancing in this scene that I would not have realized unless we had that discussion with the crew, and it also would not have been possible if the Steadicam wasn't available to us. And this actually turned out to be probably easily my top 3 shots and potentially my favorite shot in the entire film. It's the one I often think about. And our great accompanying piece of gear for what the Steadicam was a dolly slider, specifically a Kessler dolly, specifically a Kessler shuttle dolly. Good Lord. Now, as much as I love the Steadicam and as much as I love handheld coverage, This film didn't call for a lot of that. In fact, this is probably the most I've ever used sticks and these more controlled movements in a narrative piece of mine. With that said, I am a giant fan of really slow, subtle pushes and pulls on characters, like this shot here or this shot here. So in order to get these shots to have that rock solid stability and to have that truly slow, intentional, and deliberate feel of your frame just slowly closing in on a character, that's where something like a shuttle dolly comes in. And I also think this very much leans into the subtle enhancement category, because just having that slow little push is so good. Because if there's one thing I freaking hate, and I do think there's actually one or two shots in the film where I actually ended up doing this because I wasn't sure what else to do. I hate digital zooms. Maybe every now and then it does work. But for me personally, it just feels wrong to me. But actually seeing the space move with our talent and the camera in the frame is such a wonderful feeling of presence and nuance to movement that really helps to boost the ominous feel of the film, this creeping in, this looming of something dangerous happening, or just giving you this offsetting feel, or just the simple sensation of making you just want to lean in or focus in on a character in a way that isn't just cutting to the close-up. And as far as the butt saving goes, the shuttle dolly is a relatively simple setup. I'm not going to call it the most convenient thing to set up in the world, but once you have it built out and you've got two guys at the ready to move it at a whim, easier to flip, and we can just throw the dolly system with the camera still on the plates onto the rail system, it becomes way more convenient than something like, say, a Panther dolly or one of these larger cart systems that is just an entire logistical ordeal to use on set. Now, they are the greatest pro option for what you're trying to achieve with dolly shots, but the shuttle dolly brings the convenience factor to getting those smooth shots that you want. I'm not going to dig too much into the specificity of what lights we had in particular, but I'm going to categorize them. And if you want to learn more about how we actually use the lights, again, please check out that cinematography video. But as far as the category of tools that we brought in for our lighting, the first thing is LED tubes, specifically Asterotitan tubes. Right away, for the sense of how I like to light, how we like to put pops of light in places and like to be flexible, things like LED tubes are a dream. They're easy to set up, they don't require a lot of rigging, and you can boom them out, tape them up, gaff them up in a litany of ways, and sometimes you can even just set them to the side if all your scene needs is a little kick, and it doesn't take much to Hollywood these lights, where you just give it to a PA, a grip, or whoever, and just hold those bad boys up just to get a fill or to get a really broad front light when we're doing some of the flashback scenes. It just allowed us to be so flexible, which all of that falls into shot capabilities and our butt saving, because when we just needed a little something, or we just need to just get something close and we had no time, bring in the tubes. We also had RGB lights like the Aperture Infinity bars or the Nova lights. Now, the second you read the script, you knew that there was going to be a light gag where the entire space of a room goes red. So right then and there, you need RGBs. Now, you could do this with gels, or you could do this with an absolutely dynamite VFX artist or colorist. But I wanted to do this in camera because, one, it's just going to be way less of a pain in the ass to control, and it's gonna look so cool if we can pull it off. And because we were in a house and in a big warehouse that was actually pretty dark, we didn't have to have a ton of these high-powered lights. In fact, the Novas were only the 300 series. They weren't the 600s. And while we were inside the house, we just needed to tape up some of the windows. But more importantly, the Infinity bars are such a convenient piece of equipment that we had on set that not only gave us the capability to do RGB, but also the capability to do practical lighting as well, as you can see in the back here. Not to mention they're magnetic, so you can just slap them on pretty much anything that was in that warehouse and you're good to go. Whereas the Nova was also our convenient key light. Like I said in our cinematography video, we had 1200s, we had 600s, we had high-powered lights. The Nova was all we needed. And the fact that our key light could also be an RGB controlled light through Sidus Link solved a lot of problems for us when it came time to do the light gag effect. So in just that fell swoop between the Infinity bars, the Titan tubes, and the Novas, having a full suite of lights that was utilized as our daylight balance key lights and character lights and space lights, but also as our RGB lights that could all stay in the places that we were using for even just the regular lighting scenarios, solved so many things in all the categories of this film, be it our shot capabilities, the subtle nuances, even though I'm not going to call this gag light subtle, it's pretty in your face, and of course, the butt saving. So much butt saving, so much booty saving. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a little less sexy piece of gear, because it's something I think a lot of people forget about and why shooting stuff in abandoned areas and outdoor areas becomes big pain. Generators. This is where we get to the unfortunate place that a piece of gear may only fall into one category, and that usually is just simply your capabilities. There is nothing convenient about a generator. There is nothing nuanced about a generator. In fact, it may ruin the nuance because of how damn loud they can be. You have to monitor them. You have to make sure they're in a good spot. You have to make sure they're not fuming out a set. You have to make sure they're filled with gas. So really, they're just a pain. But we need power. The Novas, the charging stations, everything was running off a 4,000 watt generator that we had to keep continuously fueling throughout the day, and that poor thing was really fighting a thunderstorm. And also, to take that same argument and reflect it back to things that only maybe assist your nuances or assist your butt saving, you might have to ask yourself, what are the bare essentials that you actually need on your film? We needed a generator. We don't necessarily need cook speed pancros. So you, as the director or the producer or whoever has control of the money of this thing, you may have to make the unfortunate decision that, hey, we need a little bit more money to get a generator, so we may not be able to get the pancros. I'm gonna brush through this one real quick because I'm not a pro sound guy, but having a sound guy with a rock steady kit is crucial. But because you got a good sound operator who's worth their rate, you get things like lav mics and techniques and little doodads that are going to help reduce sound or get you a high enough quality where you can reduce other waveforms, because we had lightning storms, we had rain, we had a generator all going in the sound. So making sure we had good sound equipment was a pretty key element of the film, especially the lavalier mics. I would also like to say that I personally think that sound is one of those pieces of gear that you really, and I mean you really get what you're paying for. So if there's anything your money is going to be spent on as far as how fancy your gear and your kit is, I would much rather spend the money on a sound guy than making sure I have enough money to shoot on an Alexa or to shoot with the cooks. Because if my movie can at least sound professional, I know I can make the rest work one way or another. Now I'll rifle through some of the less important gear that more or less just made life easier and made it look like a film set. For example, director's monitors. It's pretty low in the capabilities, but as a director, it helps you focus. This is one of the few projects where the only hat I was trying to wear was director. So being able to just stand back, look at a monitor, and be hyper focused on the frame at hand is extremely helpful. I have DP'd and directed a lot of films wearing both those hats, and it can become very difficult sometimes to get a good shot, especially as a handheld operator that I like to be, and focus on the performances, focus on the things happening in the background, or being ready for certain actor marks and thinking, am I hitting my pacing? Am I hitting my right timing as a director? So having a nice little monitor myself, I can kind of back up a little bit and just watch it like a movie I'm watching on Netflix. Felt good. Do I necessarily need it? No, but it's a pretty good convenience item. And going back to the topic of items that aren't really that expensive but definitely did the job, our AC kit was a Tilta Nucleus M. Now I know there's a lot of ACs out there that probably hear that and go, ew, gross. But our AC enjoyed it, especially when you have it on a Teradek system and you actually don't have a delay in your transmission feed to your AC's monitor. Just having something that's comfortable for your AC that is just good enough can sometimes just be the winner. And it's a pretty decent system. It definitely gets the job done for an AC. We didn't have to go out and get an RE system or an RT Motion or something of that nature. As long as you can make your AC happy, especially if it's Stefano. Keep Stefano happy. Excess can be cool, backup options are great, But more importantly, are you, as the director, making very deliberate, narrative-inspired decisions on the stuff you're bringing to your set? And then are you asking yourself, is this piece of gear just something nice to have, or is it actually accomplishing a goal? Like I've said in past videos, this is all content that we are going to go way deeper into in a course that we'll be launching in the late summer going into the fall, which is going to take Trial 54, tear it apart from every single aspect of every single part of the filmmaking process to show you how to make big old short film or any narrative work for that matter. And to stay up to date with when those courses drop and other Six Shop news, head on over to the link in the description to sign up for the newsletter so you can stay informed. Because I'll be honest guys, I think this is going to do it for my free Trial 54 related stuff, at least that involves gear and cinematography. I might do one more thing that has to do with the actors and the story in the first place, which if you want to hear about it, let's talk in the comments. But you guys have been great. We're so close to 5,000 subscribers. That's a nuts thing to say for me. I was surprised even 10 of you want to listen to me or continue to listen to me, which is a very heartwarming feeling because watching my face and hearing my voice for hours in DaVinci Resolve while putting these videos together is mind-numbing. So I appreciate that you actually enjoy these videos. Anyway, this has been Davis with the Six Shop. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.